Hey everyone, welcome back to Module 3. We just finished up with the who questions and now we're going to be moving into the why questions. The overarching theme of the why questions is they're going to want to know what initially attracted you to the fire service. Kind of like with the who questions where they want to hear who you are in your own words, they want to hear in your own words what brought you from whatever career path or whatever else you were doing beforehand to where you are today, interested in a career in the fire service. But before we move on to that, let's recap. We talked about the who questions in the last one. Keep it brief, 2 to 3 minutes. That's tough. It's easy when you're talking about yourself and being asked about your own personal history to stray and start talking about things that they're really not interested in hearing about. So keep it brief, 2 to 3 minutes. Stay on point. Kind of like I said, it's easy to get off topic. Make sure you're answering the question at hand. In the last module, we went over what if you don't have a perfect background? It's okay. We've all made mistakes in our past. I have. I can guarantee you, everybody on that panel at some point in their life has done something they're not proud of. They understand. Just make sure that you own it and you take responsibility for it. Finally, we went over some sample questions. Questions like, tell us about yourself. What's your biggest strength and what's your biggest weakness? And how do you deal with stress or what are your hobbies? We went over the highlights on how to answer those and what to expect when getting asked questions like that. So, moving into the why questions, what are some good principles to keep in mind when practicing for these and preparing for the interview? Like I said before, what they really want to know is why are you here? Or said a better way, what initially attracted you to the fire service? What made you stop what you were doing and decide to pursue a career as a firefighter? A lot of the similar principles that you're going to be hearing in the why questions are just like with the who questions as far as keeping it brief and staying on point. What you really need to do with these types of questions is set yourself apart from other candidates with a personal story. It's easy to get caught up and give cliche or clone answers, so you really need to set yourself apart. Like I said before, keep your answers brief, 2 to 3 minutes at the absolute most. They don't want you to drone on and on. Their time is precious and their time is valuable. So keep your answers short and to the point. More principles to keep in mind when answering these questions. Like I said, think back what initially attracted you to the fire service. Was there some sort of catastrophic event in your life that you witnessed something and you saw the firefighters or maybe EMS personnel come in and help somebody or save somebody? Or maybe you knew somebody that was a firefighter, somebody that you really respected or you looked up to. Or maybe somebody in your family was a firefighter and you want to continue that family legacy. So think about what initially attracted you. Also, this is something that drives me crazy. I hear a lot of guys talk about, well, people just want to get into the fire service for the pension or the benefits or the time off. Your reasons for wanting to become a firefighter are exclusively yours. If your only reason for wanting to get into the fire service is great pay, lots of time off, benefits, or things like that, that's fine. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There's a lot of people out there that would give me a hard time for telling you this, but truthfully, it's up to you. Whatever you want to do with your life, whether you want to join the fire service or do something else, it's not anybody else's place to tell you that you should or you should not, or you can or you cannot based on your own reasons. So, whatever your reasons are for joining the fire service, that's good enough. Finally, when getting asked why questions, especially in your interview, do not bring up money, benefits, time off, or anything like that. Even if those are your only reasons for wanting to become a firefighter, don't talk about it. Now is not the time to say that in the interview. Think about other things that attract you to the fire service and focus on those and talk about those. But please, please, please do not bring up money, benefits, time off, or anything that has to do with the perks of the job. So, what does the panel want to hear? First, they want to hear something unique and memorable, something more than just, I want to be a firefighter because I want to help people, or I want to be a firefighter because I like helping people. They hear that from every single candidate. You have to come up with some sort of story or something that happened that makes you unique, something that stands out, something that they're going to remember long after you leave the interview and it's over. Next, they want to hear a genuine desire to be a part of the fire service. Remember, the fire service is a very tight knit community. They want to know that you truly want to be there. You're not just going through the motions and hoping you get a job. They want to hear a genuine desire to be a part of the fire service. So all that information is great, but let's actually get into some sample questions and questions that I can guarantee you will get in some form during your interview. The first one, why do you want to be a firefighter? Like with the who questions, I can almost guarantee you will get this question at some point, at least in one of your interviews. Another similar question that you might get is what attracted you to the fire service? The key you want to keep here is I know I keep saying it over and over, and I'm not trying to be annoying, but you want to tell a story. You want to tell something that makes you unique and memorable. For example, the story that I told was I talked about how my entire life I wanted to be a professional athlete and how I worked so hard to get where I was. And when the time came that I stopped playing soccer, I realized that what I missed the most wasn't necessarily the game of soccer. What I missed the most is being a part of a team, being a part of something greater than yourself, if you will. The closest thing that I found in the real world, in the civilian world, the non-sports world, that was similar to that kind of teamwork and that kind of camaraderie was the fire department. And I used examples of when I did my ride time in paramedic school with different fire departments in the area and talked about how I saw camaraderie in the fire service, and that's what I miss most, and that's what I wanted to be a part of. So that was my main reason for why I wanted to become a firefighter and what attracted me to the fire service. So think back to whenever the time was that you realized that you wanted to be a firefighter. Again, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be anything, uh, some huge elaborate story. Mine was simple. I miss being part of a team, and that's what attracted me there. So think back. What's your story? Next, why do you want to work for whatever the name of the city or district is, fire department? That's a tough question. I remember when I was going through paramedic school and fire school, one of the guys that got hired first actually got hired in his hometown where he grew up, went to high school, and still currently lived. So that's easy for him. That's an easy question to answer. Hey, this is my hometown. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to raise a family. So this is the department I want to work at. Easy. But what happens if you're not from that city, or maybe you've never been to that city before? Hell, maybe it's even in a different state. What you need to try to do is make a truthful connection to the city in some way. For example, the first department I ever got hired at was in the same city as to where I went to high school. Now, I went to a private high school and I lived 30 minutes away. But in my interview, when they asked me, why do you want to work for this particular city? The city was called Cuyahoga Falls. Why do you want to live, or why do you want to work for Cuyahoga Falls? I started talking about how this is where I went to high school. I have a lot of memories here. This is a city I like and a city I enjoy. And that was all true. So make a truthful connection to the city in some way. A little more difficult. The current department that I work at is probably about 45 minutes away from where I grew up. Now, when they asked me, why do you want to work here? I made the truthful connection of one of the officers at my department currently was also one of the instructors at the fire academy I went to. And truthfully, he was one of the most professional, put together, and best instructors in that entire academy. So I talked about how, when I witnessed this particular captain at the fire academy, I was so impressed by him and his demeanor and the way he carried himself and his knowledge that I knew that this was the department that I wanted to work for. And again, that was all true. So this is a tough question, especially if you're not from that area or you're not from that state or that city, but try and make a truthful connection to that department or that city or that area in some way. The last question that I chose is one that seems to throw a lot of people off. It's, are you on any other hiring lists? And if so, would you leave here if offered a job elsewhere? So this is really two questions in one. So we'll start with the first one. Are you on any other hiring lists? Everybody on that panel and everybody in that interview is going to know that becoming a career firefighter is an extremely competitive field. It's very difficult to get hired into a career department for a whole bunch of reasons. So they understand that you are probably taking as many tests in as many cities as you possibly can. And even if you aren't really interested in working there, you're doing it just for the practice. And if you aren't doing that, you probably should start. Taking tests is like anything else. The more you do, the better you get at it. And everybody on that panel knows that and everybody understands that. So being on other hiring lists is okay. They probably expect that. Next, if so, would you leave here if offered a job elsewhere? So this is a real tough question. And in fact, I recently heard of a guy in my area who went through an interview and they asked him this, and I answered honestly and said, "Yes, I would leave to go to this particular other city." Ends up he didn't get hired. Me personally, if I was asked this question and I knew that I wanted to go somewhere else and I knew I was on another hiring list and I was really hoping to get hired there, I don't know if I would say yes, I would leave. I understand the dilemma, the moral dilemma that that causes for a lot of people, but you need to decide what your ultimate goal is. Is your ultimate goal to be a career firefighter? Because if it is, and you have a really good chance at getting hired at the department you're already being interviewed at, you need to take the job there. A lot of people will disagree with that. A lot of people will say that no, you need to be honest no matter what. But I'm telling you, as a career firefighter, and I've seen and I know a lot of people that have had a really, really hard time getting hired, your answer to that should always be no. But I will let you decide. Because if you say, yes, I would leave to go somewhere else, chances are you won't get hired there. It's very, very expensive for any city or district to put on an entire hiring process. They have to pay for the applications, they have to pay for the physical agility, in some cases, not all. They have to pay for the test, which is very expensive. They have to pay for the time to have officers come in and do the interview. This is a very expensive process. And once you get hired, it gets even more expensive. They need to buy the gear, they need to pay your salary, they need to pay for training. It's it's a very long process and it's very expensive. So if you tell them right up front, yeah, if I get a shot somewhere else, I'm probably going to leave. They're not going to waste their time on you. So what are some other rookie mistakes you want to watch out for when answering the why questions? The first one is do not be a clone candidate. Like I said before, everybody gets asked the question, why do you want to be a firefighter? Or what initially attracted you to the fire service? Every single person in this line of work wants to be in this line of work to help people. That's fine to say that as your answer, but like I keep saying, make sure you have something to go along with it. Make sure you have some sort of unique story that separates you from everybody else. Next, don't bring up the perks of the job. Like I said before, whatever your reasons for wanting to become a career firefighter are, that's totally fine. Even if it's just for the money or the time off or for whatever reason, there's no better or right or more noble reason for wanting to become a firefighter. But in the interview is not the time to talk about that. So when they ask you, why do you want to be a firefighter? Find some sort of other reason or story or something else that attracts you to the fire service. Coming up next, we're going to be getting into the what questions. These are the types of questions where they're going to be asking you, what do you know? If you're a new candidate that has no fire experience like I was when I first got hired, what they're going to be asking is, what do you know about the fire service? Do you know what you're getting yourself into? Do you know what the responsibilities and things like that are about the fire service? Maybe you're a lateral transfer or you're somebody with some previous fire experience. The what they may be asking, in addition to seeing what you know about the fire service, they might be asking you some more scenario based questions, see if you understand the very basics of scene size up, scene safety, things like that. So we're going to be getting into the what questions. We're going to be covering the basic elements and what to include in your answers, just like with the who and the why questions. And I'm going to be going over some sample questions and answers, ones that seem to give people a hard time, or maybe ones that I had a hard time with when I was going through my interviews. Again, really quick, before we finish this module up, the why questions. Remember, be unique and memorable. Don't be a clone candidate. And whatever you do while you're in that interview, do not bring up the perks of the job.